So I'm gonna kick off the recording because I think this is a really good place to start. So let me recap the questions again. How do you, so you want to be known for React Native? You have a good blog going. You only have one article so far on React Native, and the question really is how do you identify what people want to know about? And what's the second one?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, how do I identify topics that people are
Yeah,
trying to understand and need to know more about, so that I can answer those questions? Because like I have 3 years of experience in React Native. Because like I'm already past that beginners phase, and I've already pretty much forgotten like what is it like to learn
yeah,
React Native. So how do I
yeah.
kind of get myself back in that beginner's mindset and understand what's painful for people?
So one thing I did here, so the React Native subreddit is, whoa, what is that an offer? Ah, okay. Never mind. I'll push it back a little bit. So one thing I do a lot is to browse the subreddits just to see what's up. There's something that I did for the React.js subreddit, which is host a regular um, like ask me anything question. So let's see. What was it? Beginner. So something, and this is something I actually, what is this? Sort by time, sort by top. Uh, where's the beginner questions? Wow, where's the Q&A? Hold on. So sorry, I don't know how to find it anymore. Questions. Yeah, beginners thread, easy question. So I actually started this and basically said, I will promise to answer all the beginner questions. Look at all these questions that have been done for many years. I was the first one to post this. I started it before, I guess. And basically you just let people ask you all the questions, and the more people repeat their questions, the more you understand like there's something here. You can just copy all your answers to a blog post. You know, it's kind of like Stack Overflow, but maybe more focused on serving this community, on the React Native community. Or you could just go straight to Stack Overflow and look for the top questions. I think that's always useful as well. There's always the what's new in React Native, so you can always cover news. That one there's a podcast that covers it as well, but I think it always could use another perspective, especially for beginners. And then finally, there are the conferences that are starting back up again. So CallStack or React Native Europe. Those are always good topics for like, here's what people are interested in talking about, because all of these talks are screened by a conference committee. So you at least know these are interesting and relevant topics to talk about. But yeah, so one thing for sure, like you have this. How much effort does this take? I bet this took like at least a couple of hours.
Yeah, that was just sort of me taking notes over like a few
Yeah,
days of like working through that stuff. So yeah, maybe like a couple hours to write it up. Yeah.
I would say this is effort. This is high effort for something that you're not so sure if like people are interested in knowing.
Yeah.
And you're not sure about the framing as well, because the title and the like how hard you work on a blog post doesn't really impact how much is going to be opened up and read. It's more
Yeah.
about like picking the right topic that everyone's interested in, and then maybe having an interesting point of view embedded in the title or like the little blurb description that gets people really talking. And so I don't really know about like what's out there, but you basically need to up your iteration cycle. Is what they call the sort of OODA loop. Like people with faster OODA loops can find their way towards interest points much better than people with slower OODA loops. So if you do it at the same amount of effort, like you only get to do one of these a week, let's say. But imagine if you could test like 5 ideas a week, or and see like what's the best what's the best topic that everyone's interested in. Then you can go and develop that further into a blog post. I think that's really interesting. And for me, that is Twitter. But for you, it could be something else. It could be YouTube. It could be Reddit. Just anything that you think is a good testing ground for, hey, there's, is anyone interested in this topic? OODA
That's
loop, yes.
really good advice. Yeah,
Yes.
what's the word OODA?
Yeah, observe, orient, decide, and act. It's a very tech bro, popular military-esque term, because you adopt these terms from the military and you feel like you know what you're talking about. But what all it is like, so the tech bro, or sort of standard military definition, is that people with faster OODA loops can respond and iterate better than people with slower OODA loops. So your job as a systems designer is to reduce the cycle of you getting information from the environment and then acting on that information, right? So your OODA loop right now is pretty slow. You're coming up with like ideas occasionally every couple of weeks or so. How do you increase that OODA loop? You want to reduce that barrier for testing stuff.
These posts right here are just like the most like literal learning in public that I can think
of.
This is just me, like, this is what I need to know like right now for a problem I'm solving, and just me kind of like regurgitating the notes. Yeah. And I think, that's obviously like good for me and maybe somebody who comes across it. But I, like, to your point, like I definitely want to become more intentional about seeking out. Like, I think that this might be in I don't know if it's the chapter we were going to discuss today, but somewhere in the book you say like you need to eventually shift from like helping yourself to like helping others. It's one of those gears, one of like the four gears.
It's learning gears. Yeah. It's actually way down in we're going to talk about it maybe in a few days, in the next week actually, but whatever. We jump around. It's fine. Yeah. So exactly. Really, so right now you're exploring, right? Like you're just like, hey, I'm just going to publish whatever I can. Doesn't really matter. I'm not trying to be known for stuff. You're just taking notes to self. As long as it's useful to you, that's a win. No one's expecting anything from you on a regular basis. That's fine. You usually have like a 1-day sprint. For you, it was maybe a couple days. That's fine. And this is a gear that you need if you're just trying to cover as much ground as possible in many directions, right? But like for you, when you feel like you're ready to shift gears into something that you're trying to ramp up. For you, like you've been doing React Native for 3 years, so maybe you already done a little bit of this, which is, hey, I just want to be good at React Native. So let's just settle in and then like learn up all the resources that you can possibly go, right? So there are a couple of books out there. There's a lot of content from the core team. There's a lot of stuff that you can find from the source code and the GitHub repo. Just read everything there is to know about your topic. And once you've done that, then you can start connecting, and then your main job is to start teaching others. Your exhaust is now explicitly meant for other people. So that's interesting as well. Is that something that you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Let me see. I have a couple comments here. Let's see. Max and Chad, which one of you wants to go first?
You can go ahead, Max.
All right. I'll break the tie. Chad, go ahead.
Actually, I guess this was more of a because we didn't get to talk about kind of writing in public when the topic came up, and I was just kind of wondering if we could go into that since the conversation started. But I don't want to like change the topic if other people are interested in something else.
So this chapter doesn't actually focus on the mechanics of writing because I haven't done that yet. I'm just doing. This is convincing you to write, the benefits of writing. And so it's a lot of like the what writing does for you, that kind of stuff. But if you're already convinced on how to write, we haven't actually covered that.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
So I do have a getting started, having a place to write, finding time, but I really want to have a full chapter on writing that I haven't done yet. I give you some examples of like ideas for what to write. The thing that we covered just now was like the Twitter, Reddit, Stack Overflow stuff. But you can also do interesting war stories. You can do how you work. You can do summaries as well. All of these are really interesting stuff, and they have longer half-life than this week in whatever, right? This week in whatever is a very low effort thing, and there's always news. and you always get readers, but it's a very short half-life. Like a year from now, I'm not really going to care. I'm just going to care about what's still relevant, and probably this stuff is still relevant. So, all right, Max.
Yeah, like for me, it's more or less what you mentioned about the OODA loop. So like it was about, for me, it's at the moment a lot about speeding up the OODA loop because like I really have, like writing for me is very high effort, and it's really like essentially very low impact as well. So it's very inefficient for me to write at the moment. So what I'm wondering is like how did you guys get better at writing in general? Because like I feel that like when I'm writing something, I want to make sure it's grammatically correct, you know, even factually correct, because I don't want to just publish for publishing, right? So I spend a lot of time, like for sure hours on every piece of I write online to make sure it's correct. And yeah, I get stuck a bit. Like for me, the OODA loop is very long. If you do it next to work, you know, it's gonna take at least a week.
Well, you know, you can always post on Discord for feedback. I think that's always a nice small community to test stuff with.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But that's why I definitely use Twitter a lot for that, because you know, you're restricted to 280 characters, so you don't have that much opportunity to share stuff. And people understand that, you know, a lot of stuff is a work in progress. I like this progression as well. Start with the what, then you go with the how, then you go to the why, and then you can even go historical with when and who. Basically, like answering a bunch of different questions that are in there.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of resources here for you to cover, but like, yeah, I think the main thing is overcoming the OODA loop thing. Like this is what most people see, right? When I go on Hacker News, it's always all these kinds of articles that take a while to get there. You know, hey, you know, we have like a self-hosted compiler or whatever. Like it's hard to aim for something like this. Or maybe, you know, what's the real case is that people have been working on this in small iteration cycles all the way until the Hacker News launch, or, you know, whatever the final outcome is. I don't know. I prefer smaller steps rather than working in silence for a long time before launching something big and hoping that you make it.
But what's the level of quality that should be at least there kind of to publish? Because obviously, like I can publish more often, but then the quality will not as high.
It's up to you. I definitely think there's a very wide variety. I personally think there is such a thing as too low quality that's not worthwhile, right? Like I think there are some people who say, all right, I'll blog every day, and then their blog posts are kind of crappy. See, producing a lot of crap doesn't train you for producing that much high quality, but it does give you some ability to get feedback, right? So I think some balance of that. So I think you know, again, like there's I just discovered this website, by the way, bigtextbox.com. So it's very useful for presentations like this. There's the one every day or like once a year. And then there's a whole spectrum of stuff in between, right? So you can do like one a month, like 2 a week, you know, something like that, or whatever, twice a month. Like, what is the right cadence that you want to aim for? Personally, I see the high production quality / trade-off people do 2 a week, but a lot of them are doing this full time. So maybe what's more realistic is 2 a month, and maybe this is more sort of, I'm balancing a day job, but I still want to produce a high quality thing, and that is still worthwhile. But this is the final polished output, right? But you can still do tests, something like that, and you can still, you know, like what can you schedule twice a week that you don't have to publish, but that is like an intermediate between like testing and sort of refining, or maybe getting feedback or drafting. Let me just call this drafts. So tests will be like, let's say we're testing the interest level. Drafting is like, okay, let's actually sort of flesh it out a little bit, and then final is kind of like pushing it to some kind of published state and trying to do some promotion around it. So yeah, I don't know. Honestly, like I really like this as an aspirational goal. I want to get to this level. I used to be performing at this level, and definitely because I got busier at my job, I am no longer here. I kind of drop back down to here. But you know, you'll have warm periods and you have cold periods. Don't beat yourself up too much. Just try to increase the OODA or shorten the OODA loop as much as possible.
Yeah. Like I tried to publish like notes on my website. Like basically what I went through is like the React implementation, and I just took notes of it, and I just kind of published my notes of that. I mean, it's not very high value for maybe for somebody who's a beginner, it's a bit more high value, because I thought that the explanation of Rodrigo, it was a bit difficult, at least for me it was. But I mean, I don't know, like yeah. So that's something I've been trying to do to get to have more low effort kind of posts, essentially.
Right. So you can, so instead of tests, what you're doing there is you're doing a resource, right? Like you're doing a resource that all these other efforts can draw from, right?
Yeah.
And you're building up this resource that is like a reference, or let's just call this a reference. And I think that's also super valuable, because the people who are on the same mental level as you can just go use the reference, right? But other people who are maybe a bit more beginner can will wait until you do your draft, and you constantly refer back to your reference as a thing. So I'll give you one example that I did. Maybe nullify environment variables. Say like big fat list. So when I was learning this, so this is when I was learning Netlify, I noticed that there was a part of Netlify that was not documented, and I went and documented all of them. This is never before gathered in one place, and then so this was my output for that day, and then I tweeted it. No longer there. Let's see if this is still Google. Twitter search can be a bit difficult. So I tweeted it, got some feedback, and then eventually converted it into the docs. That my document was used as a reference for this post. I also got a blog post out of it. So let me see. I think I did. I may or may not have. It may be published from like a different account. Anyway, there was a blog post somewhere. Anyways, but like all of it came from like work in progress notes, right? And I think you can use that resource as a blogging tool later on by just separating out that this is like the reference stage that you're doing with low fidelity, and then when you're polishing it up for broader consumption, you do something higher fidelity. Another example, there's a bunch of comments. Let me see. Questions. Yeah, George giving some interesting Twitter tips as well. What is this? Dedic Marco. Twitter advanced search tips. Yeah. So for what it's worth, I have this guy at Box, I think, because he copies a lot of examples from others. So if you search this guy, he's a copy. He doesn't come with anything original. There's a lot of people who do this. Anyway, so one more thing I'll tell you. So gist, Gatsby, life cycle. So I also did this example. So this is the first time when I was learning Gatsby, I noticed that there was no documentation around the Bootstrap lifecycle, which is the bulk of the build time. So I went and wrote the documentation, and now that became the basis for the Gatsby docs. Yeah, basically, like if you just practice doing this all the time, just without even being paid to do it, eventually people will pay you to do it. So yeah, pretty much word for word, they just copied it. I mean, it's been updated since then, because I did this maybe 4 years ago. But I think, if you have notes that you publish and make useful, even that is content, even though it's like super low fidelity. It's not even a blog post, it's just a GitHub gist. But hey, man, like you're just learning in public and you're publishing output that is useful to you, because this was definitely useful to me. And then eventually someone will upstream it, or you can publish it into a blog post. It doesn't matter. But because you did the work, all the subsequent stuff will be much easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because like I do a lot of note taking, but I never really get that. So okay, no, I thank you.
Use
I
your
think I have a big-
use your notes. Be proud of your notes. Share your notes. If it's a gist, people understand it's just work in progress, and they'll work with it, man. Like it's fine.
Thanks.
Dorian, you had a question.
Yeah, I just want to expand on what Max was going through. I follow a lot of like knowledge workers in the second brain area.
Second
They
brainers.
talk a lot about they talk a lot about Zettelkasten, and you kind of use your notes to, like, once you tag them right, eventually they kind of build up a critical mass, and then you can take those notes to make your big article. But in the meantime, it does make sense to me to post the little pieces of notes you have. And so eventually over time, you'll just know, okay, I have all these notes about this one particular topic. So let's really dive into it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You need to be very good at tagging, because sometimes if your tagging system is just totally random, like for a long time, I had my notes as tags like tech versus non-tech. That's not useful. You need to be specific, and then you need to go like, all right, is it React or is it React.js, or just having a good tagging system helps you to consolidate to some kind of useful granularity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, even a blog post like this, when I was getting into the second brain stuff, he released a podcast season. So this was his podcast, and then he had quite a few examples. Where is this? Can I show you the list? I can't show you the list. Anyway, he has like 10 something episodes, and I just went through and took notes on all 10, and that was a blog post. So very much like I try very much to lower my bar for what is a post, because otherwise you'll have hangups over like, oh, this has got to be good, and then you'll never ship anything. So that's something I definitely value quite a bit in terms of having high velocity of output. Okay, any other thoughts on writing? I definitely, I have more notes on writing that I haven't published yet. I like the digital writing podcast, which is something I have been checking out as well. So the digital writing podcast is by the Ship 30 for 30 guys. Let me just show you what I mean so that you understand. So this is digitalwritingpodcast.com. It's the same guys that are running the Ship 30 for 30, and they have a lot of content on writing. I really like the ultimate guide to writing as well. I think I shared the PDF for that here, so you don't have to sign up and give your email to writing. Yeah, this one. Ultimate guide. There it is. So I do quite like this. So for example, having the right mindset, having an idea generator, which is basically a way to format like, what do you want to write about, thinking through the amount of credibility that you have, thinking about the approaches that you can do, and then some other tools that you can use in terms of building up your writing capabilities. I think like this is, I actually almost want to do like a randomizer. So for example, like a Mad Libs type of tool. But I think this guy has the right idea, which is, hey, I need to write something about it. So let's do a question like that. What's the first thing you do when you do X in React Native? And you're like, okay, that's a good writing prompt for me. And if you want a successful example, it actually shows you when I do something the first thing I do is something else, and then go through the reasoning. And then he actually gives you the example. This guy seems to have deleted it. He's another one that is that's very spammy and noisy. But you can just kind of do like this sort of auto generation thing. And I almost want to think like, I think this is a good side project for people building this tool as a idea generator, and you can sort of focus on developers if you want to. I think whoever wrote this tool has a developer focused version, but I can't really remember what it is. Anyway, okay. Sorry. So yeah, so we talked about ship 30 for 30. The other one in my notes, which I really like, these are my notes, by the way. How to improve your writing. And my problem is like, I'm not a super good note taker. So I definitely don't want to teach people how to take notes because it's, oh yeah, there it is. Okay. So I really did like this workshop though, because I think headlines definitely help people decide whether or not to read you, right? Like most of the time when I'm looking at an index like this one, I'm just reading the headline. Is this a topic that I'm interested in? And that's mostly determinant of whether or not I read it. Once I click into it and I'm trying to decide, okay, I'm halfway here. There's a lot of the page left. Like I'm just gonna read through it as long as it's like vaguely relevant to the topic that I want. So like writing a really good headline actually is a strong determinant that you do need to practice. So I do like this sort of headline writing workshop that is public. And I'm going to link that in the chat so you can check it out. But mostly, I think the points are pretty clear. If you just listen to their podcast, they'll also repeat it. So yeah, I don't know. Basically, like I think these guys have some really good stuff mixed in with some really bad advice. So you just have to keep your sensibility as to what is good, and then not take everything for granted. So what do I mean by bad advice? They have some examples of specificity which are really dumb. So let me show you. According to them, I'm sorry, and like I don't mean to like they're better writers than I am, right? So I don't mean. So to them, this is a good headline. 3 tips for first-time leaders of innovation projects to stop worrying and deliver early. I think it's a very SEO-driven type motivation of like I want to have like innovation projects in my title. I want to have like delivering or whatever. If you see some of the best performing developer articles, they're not really going to do that. And also, it really looks like a BuzzFeed article because these guys really like listicles. So just be careful about the listicle thing. Like I think you can indulge in it sometimes if you don't have a better framing. But if you have a better framework for organizing, let's say you have 7, if you can come up with a better version of that, then I would encourage you to do something that is bigger than just listing things out. So for example, I could have said in this chapter, the Learning Gears chapter, 4 ways to learn in public for people just getting started. That's the BuzzFeed version of this article. Instead, I said Learning Gears because I said I gave each way a name, and I said here's the difference between them: high speed, low power; high speed, high power. I don't know, what is this? Connecting people and ideas, and then not even bother connecting. Low speed, high power. Whatever. Just giving people a way to separate them. I think I had even a visual. I'm not sure. I think I commissioned some art for this actually, but the artist did not turn out very good, so I ended up not publishing the art. But there's a 2x2 here, right? And you can give people a mental model by doing that work for them instead of saying here's just 3. This one is nice. This one they have like layer 0, 1, 2, 3. At least there's a sequential order. But here this is just a list. It's an unordered list, and I don't think that's super helpful as well. I don't know. Anyway. Overall, I think it's still a very useful thing. Just beware of the BuzzFeed pull, because I don't think that serves people very well. Okay, there's a comment in the, Max says, I recently did the Monica Lent SEO for Devs course. SEO for Devs. There's a couple of people doing SEO for Devs. I think Monica's definitely, oh, it's free? Nice.
Yeah, it's free. It was really nice.
Yeah.
It's not as long as well.
The blog post. largely based on SEO research. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's useful for people like her. So she runs this company, Affilimate, and then she also has like a travel blog that she does. That's very dependent on SEO. I'm not sure that developers specifically find things through SEO. I don't know. Like it depends if you want what you want, right? Like so for example, if you want to be Kenzie Dodds, he definitely pursued an SEO strategy for about 2 years. That made his blog quite unreadable for people who just wanted like cutting edge thoughts, because a lot of it was like driven by let's say, where's the state management stuff? I don't know. He had one article on state management which was very, very SEO driven. And I was like, oh, okay, this is this is the way to get it done. I don't know. Basically, like, do you want your blog discovered by people searching for you for those terms, or do you want people? This is the state management one. Do you want people to discover your blog based on like this person comes up with original ideas? So sometimes you just want a survey article that just puts everything and puts all the relevant concepts in one place. This is like the tutorial. This is where beginners will start, and that's, I think, it's super useful. And then if you want to be like a quote unquote thought leader, then you have to write other stuff, which to be fair, Kent has also done. It's just a little bit unclear whenever you see his blog what you're gonna get. So where's one where he was like actually kind of thought leadery? I guess this one. Even then, like I don't love this title, but whatever, it's his decision. This is his whole like why Tesla is awesome blog post, and he's kind of a big Tesla fanboy. Okay, sorry, I'm not gonna go comment on other people's work because it's not like mine is any better, but it's just a way for you to decide like what kind of writer you want to be, because it's a very personal journey, and there's a lot of degrees of freedom here for you to explore. Dorian says, I feel maybe if you want to capture beginners, SEO will work, but less so as people level up in their career. Yep, exactly. That's right. In other words, I'm justifying myself for why I completely ignore SEO. And maybe I should not. Okay, questions. All right, shall we talk about strategy? Anyway, so the last few weeks we've been talking.
But we could take it to the end. It departs from what we talked about.
Extended question? Yeah. Okay,
no, it's not.
I'll cover.
It's a more tactical. I want to get feedback from you and Antonio, because I saw you guys. I know you are big on Svelte, and Antonio ran the Svelte meetup, and my team is rewriting everything that we have in Svelte. And they picked Svelte. I've sort of been mentioning it to them, but they picked Svelte, and I want to get. Now we have Remix and Remix in front of us. Like, at least there's a lot of noise about Remix on it, and a lot of good folks are thinking Remix has made some good choices. I want to get your thoughts and idea on, like, and you've been involved with Svelte for a while, and so what's a ground reality? Like, is Svelte a good? What are your thoughts on, like? I can explain. So it's a vague question. Like, to make it more concrete, we are mostly SEO driven site, but it has widgets in them. Like, we plan to add more free widgets on the site, like, content marketing widgets on the site, and some of these are just lead paths, which configurable lead paths and whatnot, right? So it's simple, not application, public sites. And we are currently running on a stack of Laravel, Bootstrap, jQuery, and SAS, right? And what we are trying to push for is go towards something like Svelte or one of these frameworks that get, like, using Tailwind, Svelte, all the modern cool stuff, right? We are seeing much better performance, but I want to understand, like, maintainability of the code base. How is it? Like, we get a couple million views a month, right? Like this. So the site is not too small. Yeah. So I want to get your feedback on.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio can comment, but I'll just give you my quick one. Like, I wrote my my opinion on this a couple years ago called Svelte for Sites, React for Apps. And that's kind of my assessment of the ecosystem and the readiness of each framework. You're definitely caring about performance because you're mostly a content site with some widgets. And I think that's a perfect sweet spot for Svelte because you're not sharing, you're not using a lot of off-the-shelf components from other people. You're probably building a lot of your own, and they're not sharing context such that you're having to do full page refreshes as though you're like in a chat app. Like if you're building Slack, you might want to use React. If you're building Airtable, you might want to use React, that kind of thing.
Yeah. But
you're building a site that's sort of like a rich widget site. Right. If it's good enough for the New York Times Olympics coverage, where they have a lot of widgets, that let you simulate the different races of different people. I think it's good enough for you.
Cool. So what really sold me on Svelte, like when someone said, "Hey, you can put jQuery on the site," like I was instantly sold, because
why you miss jQuery that much?
No, it's just like we have a lot of legacy stuff, right? And at some point we want to put something on it, and it needs jQuery. I don't want to rewrite everything. Like it gives me an incremental path instead of saying big bang rewrite. So I can put jQuery on it. I can put D3JS on it, and like just pop it in, and it'll work, right? That was the biggest selling point for me, and the other was when I looked at our site, 90+% of the users just view one article. Like when they come from Google, they just read one article and bounce.
You need to optimize for first load. Yep.
Right. So it's all about the first load. It's not about loading the whole experience, right? So and okay, cool. Thank you.
So I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, please.
I mean, I can always talk, but I want to encourage people to talk here as well.
I feel like my big suggestion is also that Svelte is probably a much smoother onboarding experience compared to React. Like React, you have to learn a lot of stuff to start getting pretty familiar, especially with Remix that you mentioned. Like Remix definitely has quite a little bit of knowledge. Like they do tout it to be build on web fundamentals and everything, but there is a learning curve for someone that comes from a jQuery only experiences, for example. While Svelte is a much more traditional, it's a modern framework built with traditional web development experience in mind. So if you are familiar with JavaScript and so on, you can get on with Svelte so much quicker. So in terms of developer velocity from learning something completely from scratch, probably Svelte is the best thing, especially, and that's overall what I've seen with other folks as well. They got familiar with the initial step of web development faster with Svelte, and then eventually when they had to move to very, very, very interactive applications and so on, they had to move to React, but definitely that helps them learn React as well, because the Svelte experience gives you at least the common knowledge for everything underlying.
Got it. Yeah. So to be we also have written some widgets so we had this jQuery site and we wanted to start doing more modern stuff. So we built some React widgets, and for whatever reason we were not able to the page was not doing much, but those widgets were really heavy, loading 100 kilobytes of code, and the team tried to optimize it, but they couldn't. It could be maybe if we had an expert level React dev, we could have done it. But with Svelte, they are able to come up with so far what I've seen is they've been able to show make the pages much lightweight, much more lightweight, but we were not able to shrink that to it was a small widget, but React took about 100 kilobytes. I don't know what we were doing, right? So
the React runtime is 100 kilobytes. So
wow, it's so maybe it requires a certain level of expertise that my team doesn't have. That's fine. It's just they're able to do.
It's a different language, it's kind of a functional language superimposed on top of JavaScript, and all that friction that you see when using it together with D3JS and anything else is the impedance mismatch between a functional and a imperative paradigm. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the selling point as well. So I won't sell you anymore there. The last thing I'll say is, I think you have to be comfortable with the fact that it is not the top framework. If you could look at the rankings, but it's still growing relatively quickly. Like it's growing like 7% in 2020, and then 21 and 5% in 2021. The only thing is, like, is it good enough, right? Like all these popularity rankings, you're not paid in popularity. You're paid in just, is my team productive with it? Right. And so I think from just that objective evaluation, you can decide for yourself. And these are my list of selling points. So I send it to you on the chat, and you can have a read. But for me personally, the reason that you can find that much better interop is it just chooses a better base language, which is HTML instead of JavaScript. So.
Yeah, and that was huge. It just looked like HTML and styling, right? It feels much more comfortable when you have to just build a website, and you can sprinkle code if you want. Otherwise, you can take everything away and just HTML, right?
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Right. No, I know this is tactical, but I think it's important because this is our bread and butter day-to-day stuff, and we can always talk about the high level artsy fartsy tactics and strategy stuff later, but as long as we're useful here, I think that's important. Also, like it's a nice way to share how we think about technology choice, and I think that's always part of tech strategy. So yeah, just covering. So I consider the whole strategy section highly valuable in the long run, whereas with principles, it's the kind of stuff that we want to just have as a daily practice, as a regular background effort. But with strategy, it's often applying when we make major irreversible decisions during uncertainty. So you only called upon to do this at a few points in your career, but when you do, you want to make sure that you make the right choice. This is different. This is differentiated from the last section, which is tactics, which is smaller, more frequent decisions that you may need to make, or more frequent skills that you need to exercise. So strategy, and the other thing I like about the strategy is the concept of the ludic fallacy. Is that you can almost you cannot play, it's impossible to play a game that lets you practice for real life, because real life has a lot of different rules. Like the rules are constantly changing, which makes it unfair. You have misinformation, people confidently telling you things that are wrong, and you only have one run of an infinite game. So this is called the ludic fallacy, the idea that games reflect real life, and it's being hard to prepare for it is kind of like the problem that we're trying to solve with the strategy discussion. So understanding some things like working on the right problem, so having enough suspicion that sometimes your leaders might be making a mistake and therefore moving your career around. So in other words, imagine working at Google, but working at Google on Google+. That was not a good career decision for anyone under that organization. But being able to recognize that and saying, okay, like my team, my organization is embarking on the wrong strategy, I need to leave. And being very proactive about that lets you own your career, right? This is a very high agency move. There's a graphic of agency that I really like that I think developers need to really internalize. Agency cartoon. This is not high agency cartoon island. I'm pretty sure I can find this. Just. So there's a guy in the islands that's waiting for help. Oh man, I cannot find it. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? This one, right? So this is an example of someone with low agency. They take the available resources and they ask for help and they wait. Someone with high agency will take the available resources and just help themselves. I think this is definitely like one of those situations where if you don't work on your own strategy, other people are going to decide it for you, and they don't have your best interest at heart sometimes. So that's what I mean by agency, and it's this kind of what I cover in this chapter as well. Any questions on that so far? I mean, I cover a lot of like very high level topics that are relevant to coding career strategy. Too vague, too abstract. I'm gonna keep going. So 4 aspects of strategy I really like. So having a mental, and we work on this in the rest of the chapters as well. Having a really good mental model of where things are, where competitors are, where the larger technological landscape is going. Having a definite vision of the future, forming a plan to get from here to there, and then using that plan to generate a policy, what to do and not to do. So this is kind of like top to bottom, like base, future, and then filling out the middle parts of how to fill it, how to get from here to there. So I really like that as a plan, which in other words means that we'll cover some of these in later chapters. So for example, strategic awareness, right? Like having ability to map out the technology value chain and saying like, okay, here. I think a few weeks ago we had a concept of worldly maps, and let's just say I happen to work in the CRM industry. I should roughly know where things up and down my chain, as well as lateral to me, where things are headed in terms of commoditization, what's getting more competitive and what's getting more interesting as an opportunity, and that's a really good way to have a strong map of reality, right? Like I think. That's a really good starting point for the reality side of things. And then the vision is like, okay, within the next 5 to 10 years, everything is heading to this direction. And then you should be able to make a plan and a policy for choosing how to get yourself in the path of that vision, right? So for me right now, I'm considering a career in data engineering because I can definitely see some macro trends, some mega trends that are leading that way as well. And we'll talk about this more down the road. But I just really wanted to introduce the idea that we'll be talking about strategy for the next couple of weeks at least. So yeah, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but like I just want to introduce the topic as well. Antonio, I'm actively swerving that megatrend, LMAO. I mean, you're serving, so data science and data engineering, I think, are very different. And you come from the data science field, right?
Yeah, like I had a lot of like data engineering stuff before, like that, like my position overall. But yeah, like I guess I just got burnt out of the data.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to talk about it with you offline, just in case I'm missing something. But I also think like there's such a thing as fit. Like if you just don't enjoy the work, then you don't enjoy the work. Like no matter what the trend is, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm pretty sure it's a meeting because I feel like I have plenty of friends like from my graduate degree and so on who went all like deep into the data science or data engineering routes. Some work at Amazon, some work at like various companies, and most of them are like really, really happy about it. It's just like, I don't know, I just couldn't like once I moved from graduate degree to real work, it just like didn't click at all for me in terms of like fit. Like I did it, but it just like wasn't fulfilling whatsoever.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah, so I think there's such a thing as fit. You should not only decide based on the mega trends. At least you should be aware of it, And if whatever industry you choose, you should be aware of the mega trends within that industry, right? So, like, hey, right now everything is moving towards compiler first frameworks in front end. That's something that you should be aware of. You can bet accordingly. Max asks, what is data engineering, like databases? I think databases is part of it, but getting information into databases and then using it effectively is kind of what I'm going for here. So there's a lot of ingest and a lot of processing, and then a lot of consumption of data. And you can sort of view all this pipeline stuff as a separate discipline from backend engineering or front-end engineering or cloud. I definitely feel like data engineering is up and coming as his own discipline because well, there's a lot of reasons. Like there's a lot of data. The dumbest version of this that I can always say, like, did you know that data is big and getting bigger? Big data, but it's really stupid. But actually, like, kind of true. The tricky part is taking a stupid thesis and actually getting very smart about where you position yourself within that. So if you're interested, check out DBT and what they're doing to the data industry, because they're really reshaping the world in their image, which is really insane. Yeah, that's the megatrend that I've been paying attention to, and I like it mostly because I have a background in when I worked in finance, we did a lot of this. We take a lot of information in, chuck it in somewhere, do a bunch of analysis on it, and then pipe it out into some result that we take action on. And I think that's a lot of the value of software, right? Like software can be UI, software can be interacting with the server and storing your information, but a lot of times you're also reacting to that information in some sort of value-added way, right? I'll give you one example, which is very recent for me, and I've been thinking about this actually. So in Twitter, there's a lot of bots that are very obvious. So let me show you the obvious bots. So sometimes people will be promoting these NFTs, right? They'll be trying to pump these like crypto scam things, scam coins or whatever. They may or may not be scammed depending on your point of view in crypto. But what they do is they employ an army of bots to make it seem more popular than it actually is. And all these armies of bots, they're just going to tag random accounts, including me. And I'm just going to, look at this bot. It's just like tagging random accounts in order for them to get in on this. Maybe some percentage of them are going to convert into organic spread for this original NFT account. So it's so obvious. They always tag 3 accounts, and it's just tag in sequence, right? And this has been a problem for the last few months on Twitter. So I complained, and look at the number of people who also agree. Like they also see they're so tired of this. They're so tired of being spammed, reporting this every day. Why is Twitter not taking care of this? They don't have a data pipeline. It's too hard for them to get all this data together to figure out like, okay, this is the pattern of all the bots, and let's auto block all of these guys. Or they just don't care about it, whatever. But like any one of these, like I think a lot of times you always wonder like, why is the software not more intelligent? It's really because they're not using data well enough, right? There's all this data out there. There's just no system for you to make use of it. Imagine like a typical backend engineer. It's like, okay, where's the REST endpoint for this? Where in the database do I do this? Like, there's no system for you to organize such that you can say, all right, get me all the accounts that are just doing this spam tweet, that are fitting this spam tweet format, and let's just ban them once a day. Like that would immediately eliminate all this spam stuff. It's just that Twitter is not investing in this, right? Like, so, but if it was easier, they probably would, right? So what if we could make systems that made this routinely normal for any startup, any company to be able to say, okay, our customers are reporting this kind of behavior. I see it in my data. Let's just implement some filter and bot to mass ban all of it. You see this often as well. Anytime you use some software and you do things repeatedly and you're like, how come the software doesn't learn from what I'm telling it that I want? Because nobody's in charge of that data. That's my, Antonio, that's my optimistic thesis of what data engineering could be.
Oh no, I feel like there is a lot of, especially the part about the like being much more software driven. I feel like there is the figure of the analytics engineer that is starting to come up. Like my role, actually, the last role I was in before I accepted this from their position was analytics engineer, and it's really that it's all the softwareization and the automation of these tasks that before were like pipelines, yes, but there is much more to it now, because the pipelines that they have to work on so many different like they have to be piped, and not only like in a data warehouse as it used to be, but there is like things like reverse ETL, ETL only transforms, which is like DBT is doing, and like there's so many fields that definitely it's a booming and interesting field, and like a lot of like a lot of people can be finding a lot of value out of that, because the untapped potential of data is incredible. And yeah, the analytics engineering position, I've seen them coming up, and like since I had the analytics engineer on my profile, I've been like constantly bombarded by LinkedIn recruiters for like analytics engineers positions, and it's like, oh my god.
So yeah, I think it's look, like it's a hypothesis that I'm working on. May or may not work out, but we'll see. I think there's lots of interesting things going on in every single field. So yeah, anyway, so that's the strategy chapter. I wanted to just like introduce it. It looks like we also discussed a bunch of other sort of related stuff. I think that's going to be it for today, but you know, I think we had a really good preview of the next few chapters. Let me just kind of pull it up just so we can preview it. So I really like the learning gears section, which I definitely talked about, but we already previewed some of it. So let's also discuss the big question of whether or not to specialize or generalize, because I think that's something I'm also always asked. And I think this is a strategy question that we should all have a little think about. I try to constantly specialize, but then I keep getting pulled into the generalist function, and I wonder what you guys are thinking as well. So yeah, we'll try to do that next week. George says, "What is the print in your background?" I don't know. This just some African lady, and I presume they left their Instagram here, so you can check it out. Sophie T Art, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I do like artists. Oh, look at that. Oh, this is a real person. Rigoberta Menchú. Was in Mayan, and then did some stuff. I have no idea in what country though. Somewhere in South America. I don't know. You can look up her Wikipedia, Rigoberta Menchú. Anyway, that's her. All right, Tanner. Yeah, the same time. Meetups the same time every Saturday. No worries if you can't make it. But I just try to make it regular so that we have a community that we see each other frequently, and feel safe discussing career stuff that comes up. People come in and out, but I just try to keep up a regular thing. I learn a lot from you guys, so and I'm interested in your feedback. Okay,
well, this was a great first experience. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And yeah, catch up on the other videos, and welcome to our group. All right, see you guys. Here. Bye, everyone.